From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, we're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the prize.
From the battlefield to the boardroom, this is Dog Tags to Ownership, the podcast where veterans share their journeys from serving our nation to leading in business. They're inspiring stories of grit, growth, and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives those who've served to succeed. Tune in and take the first step toward your own mission in entrepreneurship.
Military One Percenters, welcome to Dog Tags to Ownership, where once a week we interview veterans who charted a path towards entrepreneurship. Here, our goals are to share resources, advice, and success stories about starting a business, discuss strategies for building financial independence and creating your own path, and most importantly, build a community to support each other through the challenges of transitioning from service life to civilian ownership. Today, we're extremely excited to introduce our guest to the show, Scott Kelly. Scott is a retired Army officer and the founder and editor-in-chief at The Water's Edge, and the founder of @GrayZone Advisory. Scott provides an insider's perspective on national security and geopolitics, consulting and businesses and policymakers on navigating the world's most complex challenges. Scott is also the viral sensation at the Jonas Brothers concert where his LinkedIn bio was being read by others, and then subsequently went on the Fallon Show and discussed how to help and impact the veteran community. So, Scott, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today to discuss your journey. How are you?
I am doing well. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Jimmy Fallon and then Dog Tags to Ownership. It's quite the
Man, my media career is just zooming right now.
So we found you because of that, actually, your viral sensation moment. But the thing that made us reach out to you was when you went on the Fallon Show, you took the time to plug veterans and how impactful the veteran community is, and for those to help the veteran community. And that's what our podcast is all about, is helping the community reach out to you. And so glad that you're able to come on, because I think it is a meaningful conversation to have for the veteran community, military connected and military community, and how we help each other at the end of the day. So before we get into all that, though, could you first just tell us a little bit about yourself and your military experience?
I joined the Army out of Penn State's Army ROTC program in 2012. Commissioned as an infantry officer, just straight branched infantry. Went to Ranger School, Airborne School, all the stuff that infantry officers go to. Got assigned to 187 Infantry up at Fort Drum, 7th Battalion, Climb to Glory. Was a rifle platoon leader for a year in Charlie Company, then an assault platoon leader in Delta Company. Was then the Delta Company executive officer. I had gone to my battalion commander and asked for his recommendation to go to Ranger Regiment because I wanted to do something more fun and spicy with my Army time while I was there. And he said, no, Ranger Regiment, the soldiers are so good, they don't need officers. It's a sham job. You're staying here. So nobody in my battalion was allowed to put in a packet for regiment. So after that conversation, went down to the SF recruiter's office, which at that point I had never thought I was going to do, and put in my packet for SF because I was looking around the infantry and I was looking at all the majors as a lieutenant going, wow, I don't know if I'm doing 20 years in the Army, but everyone here seems sad, so it won't be this. So whatever SF is, maybe that's my career, maybe it's not, but the infantry sure as hell isn't, so let's go try that. So got picked up for SF, went through the Q course down at Fort Bragg, got assigned to 3rd Special Forces Group, which was a blessing. Did 4 years in 3rd Group, commanded SFODA 3233. Got them right out of the Q course because the guy who was previously in charge got picked up for Delta. So I signed in and there was a slot open and boom, you're on 3233. Awesome. I did 2 years there, a trip to Morocco for a JSET, and then was the Company XO and went to Afghanistan 2020 to 2021, running the Crisis Response Group for Regional Targeting Team North. I came home from that. Along the way, I'd gotten a little banged up. And so found out instead of going to the major board, I was headed to the med board. And so I managed to retire from the Army 10 years early. Hell yeah, overachiever. And March of 2022, got handed my white retiree car. And now I'm retired from the Army as a captain. Yeah.
Congratulations. I
Thank
was
you.
I was thinking when we talked earlier, we barely crossed paths at Drum. And I was one of those sad majors that you probably would have seen in the halls up there at the headquarters.
It's true. I tell people all the time, people make the decision to stay in the Army based off of the way that you act. So if we want to keep people in the Army, then you have to act happy, because when they see you, if you seem sad and miserable, then they're going to make the decision to get out of the Army because they don't want to be like you.
I can make it even better for you. So I tried out for selection and I didn't get picked up the first time. And they gave me a 90-day return. Turns out, like, I thought as an officer, like, you can't try out twice, but there's an exception where if they really like you but you didn't quite make it, they will let you come back like 90 days later. So let me come back, and it's like the day after the trek. I'm as broken and miserable as I've ever been. I'm back at Fort Drum the day afterwards. I'm walking in there with a dead man's profile, like limping in my soft shoes and PTs for the day. And I just remember standing in the office at 187 Infantry in the company cough, looking left and right up the hallway. And like, I just got my, you can come back in 90 days. I didn't know about it. But as soon as I walked into that hallway and just looked up and down, I'm like, I am definitely going back to selection. Whatever it takes.
I thought you're gonna say the sergeant major came up and thought you were a dirtbag or something.
Second time I go, I get picked up, but they give me my phone back, and I text my boss, who's the company commander, actually came in the Army as an 18 X-ray, enlisted, green to gold E6, like, really good dude, Jason Nessie, love that guy. I was like, hey man, like, I got picked up. He's like, congratulations. You also like made the captain list where you're gone. We're going to pin you when we get back. I was like, that's awesome. He's like, you also got fired. I'm like, what? So the battalion commander had called me a faggot and fired me at a battalion staff meeting that I was not at, but I heard all about. And so I came back from selection to find someone else in my office. And then I'm out processing drum, and previous battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel S. Candone, he later pinned 06. I don't know if he got a star. But he was the previous battalion commander. He links up with me. He's like, oh, Scott, you're out processing. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, you going to Triple C? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, have fun at betting. I'm like, well, actually, I'm going to brag. He goes, oh, you went to SF. I was like, yes, sir. He literally turned around and walked away. So if you're an infantry officer, the hate out there for SF is real. And if you try out, I hope you get selected, because if not, your life's gonna suck. So there's some motivation.
When you were retiring, like, what was your transition plan? How did that look for you when you were getting out?
Yeah, so didn't have a great plan, but what I did have was a great family. I came back from Afghanistan, and thankfully my wife was still there. And prior to deploying in 2020, wife and I, we'd been having fertility issues. Finally got pregnant naturally, like right as I'm getting ready to go out the door. And then my wife's also a nurse practitioner. It's the height of COVID. She's treating COVID patients in North Carolina. Her family's in New York. No one can travel. So she's about to hang out in North Carolina by herself with what ended up being a high-risk pregnancy, treating COVID patients at the height of COVID. I have no return date from Afghanistan. And the unit I'm replacing has already been extended. So I'd gotten home just in time for my son to be born. And as that's all going on and I'm a brand new dad, I find out that I'm being medically discharged from the Army one way or the other. Had a really bad back problem. I couldn't dress myself in the morning. Like, things were rough for a while, 18 months of physical therapy to walk again normally, all that good stuff. So I'm thinking that I'm going to go to DC and work with like the 3-letter agencies or a think tank. Cause at the time I was doing a master's from American University School of International Service. Great program. I'm finishing this master's. I'll go there. I'll do that. Be closer to family. My wife comes home one day and says, I want to be near my family, like not near my family. So we're going back to upstate New York. There is precisely nothing in upstate New York, but the family. And she's a nurse practitioner, so we'll move back and she'll have a job and we'll be fine and I'll figure it out. But now it's okay. I have no plan. We got to figure it out. Smartest thing I ever said yes to in my life was, yes, we're going back to upstate New York. That was the right answer for anyone listening. So what am I going to do? It's like, well, shit, there's upstate New York. Like, what is there to do there? Started doing a PMP transition program through Onward Opportunity, Institute of Veterans and Military Families, actually through Syracuse University, where I was moving close to. That was great. I like to call myself the most successful program failure that they ever had, because I never actually completed the PMP exam, but it's because I got the job and they wanted me to leave early to go take the job. So I did that. But as far as plans, my only real plan was, let me just find something in the area and start working. And once the family's stable, I'll figure out what the rest of my life's going to look.
And so was that your first job then, I guess, was the job out of where you didn't get the PMP, but you were a project manager coming out of there?
I hired as a project manager at JMA Wireless.
Okay. Yeah. And then that's where you were for the past few years.
For almost 4 years, yes.
Yeah. So when did At the Water's Edge, when did you start that business and that podcast? And what did that, like, what was the passion behind you starting At the Water's Edge?
It originally was a blog that I had started. Before that, I had a bunch of thoughts and frustrations as a junior officer. Actually, especially when I first got hurt and I developed a chronic condition that would eventually get me medically retired, but it was still early in my SF time. I was still on a team commanding. Realized that I'd gotten a lot of bad information out there about what it means to be hurt and all this stuff. So I wanted to share my perspective. And so actually penned a piece for the Green Notebook, Joe Barley. First piece I ever wrote, it's called Commanding with an Injury. And that got published and then got a really nice feedback. I'm like, okay, I have a voice. I can write. I can share these thoughts. There's avenues out here I should pursue. So did that, did another piece while I was in Afghanistan and decided to start my own blog after that. And then when I transitioned to civilian life, I figured if I should turn the blog into a podcast, because at least I then knew like one other person was engaged in the conversation. So started podcasting just as a passion project. I was also very disillusioned with how the national security establishment thought about warfare. I was there for the end of Afghanistan, got to watch northern Afghanistan fall apart in real time while we were there. At this point, like nothing I learned as a Green Beret or through the Army and nothing I was learning in graduate school for international relations was explaining what I was seeing happen in real time. And it was almost like the institutions were deliberately tone deaf to reality. So it was my small attempt to have a voice in a conversation that I thought wasn't present but needed to be.
So what types of guests were you getting on your podcast when you transition it from the blog over to the podcast? Like who are you talking to in that space?
Yeah, so some of the initial guests, there was the guy who famously like resigned from the State Department over the war in Gaza, had Sean O'Keefe on, former Secretary of the Navy and NASA administrator. But I was talking to current and former practitioners in the national security space and also wanted to take a more holistic view. So I was deliberately trying to talk to folks who weren't in the DoD. So I had a guy on named John Pellison, author of Wireless Wars, talking about how China took over the wireless industry from the US and now Huawei's 5G networks are everywhere and how that's a national security threat. So I was trying to talk to folks who could help us have a very holistic understanding of what American national security is, because folks just seem to think that we got big military and we go blow stuff up and we good. And that's not how it works, but that's where the conversation was.
So you are making the connections there, and then this starts to turn into an advisory consulting business as well. Is that kind of the path it went?
Yeah. So as I was working for JMA Wireless, I was a project manager, but I quickly started getting pulled into marketing, communications, business development, almost direct sales, and started an expeditionary 5G program there, designing and a field expedient expeditionary 5G kit to power mobile command post for the Army. And I started to realize I had this weird combination of communities I could speak to because I'd been 10 years in the Army. I'd been in special operations. When I came out from that, I was actually an advisor for the 18th Airborne Corps on how to integrate special operations. So I got to see a very holistic view of what the military was, not an expert at all, but very holistic. I was an editor for the Journal of International Service at American University. So I understood the academic community. And now I was in the government contracting community trying to actually sell the private sector to the government. And I saw a technology that was better than what I had in Afghanistan the year prior. It's like, why can't the boys just have this now? This is better than what we had. And so I spent a couple of years trying to sort that out and had a lot of success. But I realized that the success was translating between those communities, the warfighter community, the policy community, the academic community, and the private industry community. That was my most valuable skill set. And all my success came from being able to pull those communities together to solve various problems. And that's where the advisory piece came into it.
You're doing At Water's Edge, kind of say like passion project type thing, trying to really just talk about national security, that space, connect folks with that, but still working, at your civilian job as a project manager, doing all those things. And then I guess what happened in 2025, a November timeframe
Yeah.
to, where you are today. Can you take us kind of like what led to that and now your new business that you founded?
Yeah. So there was the viral moment with the Jonas Brothers. And the way that played out is, there's a concert on a Sunday, early November, and this girl takes a TikTok video of someone looking at my resume on their phone at the concert. The Jonas Brothers comment on the TikTok video. Hundreds of Americans companies comment on the video. It becomes a viral sensation. So, Wednesday that week, people had figured out who I was online. And so national media outlets are reaching out, including Jimmy Fallon. And his team reaches out and says, hey, can you come to New York City? The Jonas Brothers are going to be on tomorrow night. Like, you can meet them live and can talk about this. It'd be really cool. So like, yeah, sure. Like, say yes now and figure out what it's going to be later. This is a really cool opportunity. And so then I'd gone to my company and let them know, like, stories out there. I wasn't actively applying for a job. I'm in an MBA program. My resume's out there. I'm not sure who circulated this, which was true. Figured it out later, but like generally didn't know where this came from at the time. But media is reaching out. What should I tell them about where I work? Because I can tell them like, hey, JMA is a great place to work. Really happy here. Or give them this feel like, and we're doing this expeditionary 5G program and we're kicking Lockheed Martin's ass and we're doing all this great stuff. And you want the vanilla version or you want the spicy version? How do you want to play this? They came back, said, well, just don't talk to media. Like, there's no reason for you to be speaking to anybody. It's like, oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay, so you guys don't want to be part of the story. It's like, well, we really prefer you don't talk to media. I'm like, well, I mean, what I do in a personal capacity outside of work is my own business, right? They're like, well, I mean, technically, yes. I'm like, that's weird, but okay. So I put in for PTO and it got approved. And I went to my wife and I was like, they seem really like peeved off about, like, weirded out about this. Like, this is strange. The CEO, John Malingo itself, like, I saw the screenshots of the message saying like, yeah, John says don't talk to media. I'm like, why is just John care? But whatever. Took PTO, went and did Fallon, did 8 other national media outlets that weekend, had a great time. And yeah, use it as an opportunity to speak about the importance of supporting veterans transitioning out of the military, because I don't know about the world's problems, but that's one problem I know very well personally, and then helping other people through it as well. You guys all know that. So yeah, I took the opportunity to do that. Next day, I got a phone call saying that they were considering my termination and asking for my formal statement as to why I was talking to media. And I said I had an opportunity to go on national media to speak in support of a veteran community that had literally saved my life. And I used personal time and resources to do so. And I wanted to say a lot more, but I shut up right there, which I do think was the right answer. And they said, okay, we'll get back to you. And then a short while later, they fired me.
As you talked about veteran transition resources and your transition out of the military and so many other veterans who have had a struggle with transitioning out, what was your hope, I guess, to the rest of the world as they're listening to help our community? It's a huge problem that not a lot of people see, and a lot of people could help with it, but they don't. So, what's your thoughts on that, and what are some
Yeah.
things or resources that we need to do better as military members, veterans, military connected, to really advocate for those services?
So my hope was just bringing attention to an issue that I think it's not fleshed out enough, especially for folks going through the process. I remember for me going through, and it's like everyone I'm going out with, like they're planning on this and they're all going to like try to go to M7 MBA programs and go work in finance and follow this like path. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, I'm finishing my master's in international relations, but I'm running off to upstate New York to do I don't know what, but my family's going to be fine. There was this very narrow, there's a lot of pressure when you're in the military transitioning out to have a plan for when you exit. And it's this mindset you almost have in the military where like, you must plan your career out because you have a limited amount of options. You have to hit these certain gates to get to where you want to go. Or if you don't get there, then you can go over here and this sort of stuff. So there's all this pressure to have a plan. And even if you have the plan, transitioning out of the military was more difficult than going through SEER school. I think I'd rather redo SEER school than transition again, because at least there I knew what the objective was. And I think one of the things when you talk about veteran transition, where it's okay to have a plan, but your plan is not prescriptive. It's just a good idea. And by the way, you're making this plan with almost no information because you've never been a professional civilian before. And everyone giving you advice, they haven't either. So it's okay to have a plan, and it's okay to update it daily as you receive new information. But the amount of pressure you feel like, oh, yep, I got this job lined up and I'm going to go do this and I'm going to do that. It's like none of the things I thought I was going to do when I got out ended up being what I was going to do when I got out. But everything I've done has been a way better fit than anything I thought was coming. So you almost need to trust the universe that you're going to be okay and accept what you see in front of you and not be so beholden to what you imagine the process would be. I think that's a mindset shift that we just don't give people permission to go through.
And Scott, I'm sure you experienced it, as a company grade officer transitioning out. But for Julie and I, it was always like career suicide to mention the thought of transitioning out, right? So
But yeah.
when you're junior, you're talked out of any idea, and you don't share that with anyone, with your branch, with your immediate leadership, because that kind of sinks your career. Right? Then you're going to get
Mhm.
the worst jobs. Like you said later on, when you feel maybe more comfortable, and for us, we were nearing 20 years. But to your point, the people you're talking with, the colonels or maybe general officers, they've done nothing but serve. And it briefs well, like have a plan. The people at TAP, A lot of them didn't wear the uniform. They're civilians, they're contractors. So who do you talk to?
I think this is where you need to take a lot of personal accountability and responsibility, which are buzzwords I hate to use, but it's true here. You should get on LinkedIn and your goal should be to cold call 1,000 people before you transition out of uniform. And it's simple as go on LinkedIn, look up random stuff you don't even know if you want to do or not, and just find veterans working in that company and be like, hey, I'm a veteran about to transition. Can you please help me out? Some of the best advice I got was from a guy I reached out to at a consulting firm in DC, and he took a liking to me just because I reached out, and he spent like a year helping me get ready to transition out. Wasn't working in consulting at the time, wasn't going to go to DC, like nothing. But the civilian world, especially corporate America, it is structured so differently. The culture is so different. How you're viewed is so different that you need to talk to 1,000, and I don't mean that hyperbolically. You need to have 1,000 conversations with people just to understand the environment they're going into and the opportunities that are there because they're real. There's tremendous opportunity out there. You shouldn't be scared about it, but you have no benchmark for comparison walking out of uniform, especially as a mid-career transitioner. And one of the most upsetting things when I look back on it from being a mid-career transitioner, I remember being in Afghanistan and I'm there with the company commander, and my commander at the time was actually one of the best officers I ever worked for. But he made the comment there is like, at this point, we're all here for the career because like it's a bunch of captains with 8 to 9 years in. And I was like, are we all? And like this idea where like once you get past a certain point, you have to go to 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in special forces getting medically retired. My back's all jacked up. Like I can't, it takes me 45 minutes to put my socks on in the morning. Like life is not good. And people are still telling me like, oh, well, you can like go through rehab and like, oh, if you can't be SF, like go to a functional area and we'll like by name request you to come back to brag and we'll get you to 20. I'm like, for what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? And it's like, well, no, you have too much time in. There was a general who lived around the corner from me, a really nice guy. He was actually the first one to ever babysit my son when he was born. So my wife and I go for the first date. Even he was like, well, you 10 years in, you'll be at, you have too much time. You really should stick around for 20. That was complete crap. Like I was able to go out into an area with no real industry, got into an industry that I knew nothing about telecommunications, made really good money while I was working there, started my own business at the back end coming out. Like you can find radical success if you put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be as open to the opportunity for radical success as you are worried about the opportunity for failure.
Scott, you and Matt both hit something that I hate when people ask, and it's something that we all, like everybody in the military does when somebody's getting out. It doesn't matter, captain, sergeant, whatever, but it's what's your plan? Like, and it goes back to what you said, as a military, like, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And we feel military members who are thinking about transition is like, you have to have a plan because that's what's ingrained in your mind and everything else. But like, you're a perfect example, right? Of you somewhat had a plan, but then not really because your wife wanted to move back to upstate New York. And then you got into a sector or a field that you had no idea about and you were successful there. And then now, you started your own 2 businesses, and one was a side hustle now turned into your primary source of income. So I guess to go on to that topic with your new business that you just started because of being laid off or fired from your previous job, how was that transition from going from a side hustle into the real deal? And what have been some, learning points that you've had in really building your business now to provide for you and your family?
Yes. One thing I'll say is that if you do have a family, these are all family decisions. And so every decision I've made either to leave the military or what to do after, like this has been in full consultation with my wife. So you're definitely not out there as a rogue operator when you have a family. That's a very real concern. I am lucky. My wife's a nurse practitioner. We live in a rural area, so she can be a standalone sugar mama if she needs to be. So to anyone out there, marry the hot chick with good earning potential. It does help as a baseline. The other thing too, just from a mechanic standpoint, long term, the more conservative you are with your personal finances, the more aggressive you can be with your professional pursuits. And one of the greatest values I've had with starting my own business and turning it into a full-time income source is I don't need to rush to book revenue. And that's allowed me to let a few things bake and marinate. If I can wait an extra month, this can be worth twice as much. That is a very comfortable position to be in. But one of the biggest prizes too is like, and I think every business owner realizes this, doing the actual work is easy. Doing the things that I sell to people as services, that's actually super easy compared to what I think it needs to be. The hardest part is customer acquisition. And it's not even convincing people that what I do is valuable. It's very easy to convince people what I do is valuable, but it's finding the people that have the budget and have the need for it, like the mechanics of that. So if you have the talent for something, your problem is going to be sales. And if you have the talent for sales, get a partner that can do the work. But if you can, and both of you can be patient, this stuff's not rocket science.
So can you talk about what your business is, what you
Yeah.
provide,
Mhm.
and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and this is something I did not know was a career field when I got out. But what I do is I'm essentially a geopolitical analyst, and then I package that into two different services. One is helping established companies anticipate and react to changing global trends. Things like, hey, the Strait of Hormuz might be going bye-bye for a bit. How does this impact XYZ? Or, this administration is about to transition out. There's certain subsidies, certain this, like, how could this impact, how do people in DoD actually make decisions? Because if you're a private business, they don't make them with you in mind. So what do we need to understand from a business standpoint to prepare for that? And that's derived from understanding global macroeconomic trends. The other part of it, and this part's a little more cut and dry, is helping smaller companies, particularly startups, position themselves to sell their dual use technology to the DoD as a customer. So federal business development. But that's all backed out of understanding how the global landscape is shifting, understanding what strategies the US is likely to pursue to counter those, anticipating what the procurement decisions and needs are going to be from that, and then helping companies who are already developing technology position themselves to take advantage of those trends. So it's like a backwards walking of macro trends into micro actions. And it comes from this very unique background that I have being an operator in the Department of Defense, witnessing state and collapse in full time, having an advanced degree in international relations let me understand that side of it. And then also working in the business community, actually developing and booking millions of dollars in revenue for private organizations that are trying to sell to the DoD and understanding what the actual problems there are. Just that knowledge, understanding that coaching is a service you can package and sell to the right folks.
And you said that work is easy.
Oh, yeah, the work is easy.
How do you stay in tune with all of the things, or how do you narrow your scope based on like which company you're consulting with? Like, where do you start?
There is, and that's the hardest part. You can't boil the ocean. Eventually, you have to pick a spot to go fishing. So as far as picking the spot to go fishing, one of the cool things about the Fallon piece, even though I got fired for it later, one of the cool things about that is putting myself out there and having people see like, hey, this guy had the opportunity to go on national TV. He used it to support veterans. The amount of veterans who have reached out to me, some of whom are in very influential positions in private organizations, and said, like, hey, Scott, what can I do to help you? And that's a scary thing because if you can ask for anything, what do you ask for? I started asking for help starting my own geopolitical consulting business. Weird thing to ask for. But I decided to use it for that. And so like, hey, can I come intern at your company next, after I finish my MBA, whatever. So if I'm going after startups, for example, I can go try to Google and find every startup in the area. And again, constraint that I'm working with, I'm in upstate New York. Not a lot of startups where I'm at. And my family's not moving to Boston, New York, Silicon Valley. Like I'm stuck here. That's a constraint I have to work with. So if I want a higher probability of success, well, who funds startups? Private equity and venture capital. So if I'm going to approach somebody, if I can approach private equity and venture capital and be like, hey, if you introduce me to your founders, I can help you de-risk your investments because I can help you decide which ones have legs and which ones don't. And now they're my referral source. So I don't have to have 50 founders I'm reaching out to, hoping to convert 10 to phone calls, hoping to get 3 clients. If I can get a handful of, not even like formally the firm, just the people who work at those firms who have their own P&L, profit and loss responsibilities, to think that I'm a trusted asset, they can refer me in.
Okay. So
and that's my avenue there.
Reverse engineering.
That is your goal in mind also to help those like the veteran owned business community in that consulting space and what you're doing, because there is a ton of veteran owned businesses that are out there that need to understand geopolitics and how that plays into what they're trying to build. So are you aligning or partnering with those private equity or venture capitalist firms?
The nice thing about running your own company, you get to pick who you accept as clients. There's a strong bias in everything I do into supporting other veterans, especially folks who I think veterans, and it's almost like the earlier you get out, the better this is for you. Veterans who like got into the military, felt it, lived it, smelt it, dealt it, got out, started their own thing. They are still so mission driven, and they did not hang out long enough to accept They didn't drink the Kool-Aid for 20 years. They got out early. And because of that, they still have the mission and the drive, but they don't have the constraints. And so how do you take them and help them position themselves so they're not crushed by Lockheed Martin, the big five defense contractors? And every time a small business cracks the monopoly that the big five have on procurement, that is directly an improvement to our nation's national security. I firmly believe that. And veteran run businesses are the best to do that because they show up with the values of actually supporting the nation. You don't need to explain to them or coach them into why this is good for your P&L statement or why this is good for your eventual evaluation if you want to make an exit. Like they get it. And if they didn't get it, they wouldn't have started the damn business to begin with. So yes,
Yeah.
huge bias towards helping those organizations. It is healthy for the country.
Yeah, and 100% agree. And I think about some of our past guests. We had Zach Staples on, and he's the founder of Phantom 5, where he's helping build AI technology for ships, and other things. And Patrick Murphy, big venture capitalist, investing in tons of veteran-owned businesses, over $300 million into veteran-owned businesses. I think it goes back to what you said on Fallon, right? The helping the veteran community with transition, but then just helping the veteran community with that voice in America, and how do we as veterans help America to continue to grow. So Scott, as you've been going from a side hustle to now full-time hustle business and really getting in that space, what has been your biggest challenge that you've had with the business and getting the business going, now over the past few months?
Yeah, so two pieces. One is new client acquisition, just marketing and outreach, just plain as that. The other one is just personally in my own head, actually owning that, yes, I am doing this. Yes, this is my business. Yes, this produces income. This is not just a good idea. Like we are doing this. And, whether my kids go to, a good college or a bad college is directly dependent on how well I can pull this off. And that is a mental shift it took me a while to trust myself. Do I really trust myself to pull this off solo? I know I can do it, but do I trust myself to pull it off solo? That was a hard transition to get through.
Do you have a marketing strategy campaign? Like what's been your marketing strategy to get client acquisition?
Yeah. So actually, the podcast has been my number one sales funnel. And of course, there's a pre-conversation and post-conversation at the end of every podcast. And the folks I talk to on the podcast, they don't work in the geopolitical consulting space, but a lot of them are big names in that space. And so just having the forwardness stand and then like drop like, hey, by the way, I'm doing this. If you think of anybody that needs it, feel free to refer me. And so those word of mouth referrals have generated all of the new business. I've not done any Google ad spend or anything like that. I'm not sure that would work for what I'm trying to do necessarily. There are some interesting things you can do with LinkedIn with geotagging and targeting that I'm looking into, but I haven't spent any money on it yet. But all of it has been word of mouth referrals, primarily through guests that have been on the podcast.
Slightly similar question to how you answered the challenges question, but what advice would you give to a service member like yourself that's getting out, that's, there's fear of the unknown, not entirely sure what direction they're going to take? What advice would you give them?
It's okay to have a plan, and it's okay to know your plan doesn't mean shit when reality hits. And reality is going to hit hard, and that's okay. It's not you. It's just genuinely challenging. If you're getting up every day, you're still winning. Just plow ahead. And here's one of the freeing things about taking the uniform off. Once you take it off, nobody cares if you were a colonel, if you were a captain, if you were a staff sergeant. Like I got a guy from a team who went to Duke and get an MBA. And you know what? If he and I had both gone to Duke and gotten our MBAs, the rest of the world would just seen as like, oh yeah, SF guys who went to Duke, like your rank doesn't matter. You don't carry it with you. No one in the civilian world even understands what it means. Like they don't know anything. So you can be anybody. Your options are so much greater than you can possibly imagine. So be open, be curious, be hungry. You're going to be fine.
That's great.
Okay, before we get to our last two questions, Scott, was there anything that we didn't ask you today that you would like to tell our listeners or followers?
If you need any help with geopolitical risk consulting or federal business development growth, please check out GrayZoneAdvisory.com and come check out At the Water's Edge podcast, available wherever you stream podcasts and on YouTube now. We've expanded to YouTube. We currently have an ongoing series with Robert Pape from the University of Chicago, author of The Escalation Trap. He's got a great Substack. He's been coming on to do weekly briefs on the status of the war with Iran. And at the end of May, beginning of June, should have a multi-part series coming out on post-traumatic stress disorder in partnership with the Wounded Warrior Project at Emory University and some other folks who might be joining up too. So look out for those two things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, kudos. You're doing some amazing things. My passion, we talked about a little bit before we started the podcast, but it's in the real estate investing realm, owning small multifamily properties. So a lot of my reading and audiobooks and stuff like that are in that realm. What would you recommend to our audience members, our listeners, a book, a podcast, audiobook that's really helped you out?
John Pelson's Wireless Wars was a great book. One, for me to get into understand an industry, telecommunications moving the first time, but two, really mapping out how something as mundane as the telecommunications industry is key to America's national security. And reading that book and interviewing John Pelson later really helped me become aware of the possibilities of going into that space and starting my own business there. That was foundational for me, and it's an incredible read. So John Pelson's Wireless Wars is one. Then also Unit X, Defense Innovation Unit, and the work they've done with trying to develop new pathways in the federal procurement process for small businesses. So if you're a small business out there and you're trying to get into this space, you're not sure where to start, it really will help you if you're trying to get into the government procurement space as a small business and you want to know the lay of the land before you get your toes wet.
No, that's a great recommendation. I know, especially Julie being in the National Capital Region, lots of soldiers interested in entrepreneurship are trying to go that route, I think. Right, Julie?
Yeah, and I think you're the second person that recommended that book in the past few weeks, actually. I feel like somebody else, or maybe I was talking to someone, they recommended that book, and I've heard it's a great read. I haven't read it yet, but so definitely something I'm gonna have to check out. And with some of the changes, and I think this is why I was recommended with some of the changes to federal procurement now with veteran-owned businesses, small businesses, and how to get into that space. So that might have been where I heard it from, but no, great recommendation. So, Scott, our last question of every episode, Admiral William McRaven authored the book, Make Your Bed, Little Things That Can Change Your Life and Maybe the World. So do you make your bed every day?
I do not. I am terrible at it. I have never done it since I was a small child. I think it's a complete waste of time. Nope, never want. The only time I ever make my bed is when I want to impress my wife. When I'm trying to stack the cards in my favor for whatever reason, I will go the extra mile to make the bed. Because that seems to make her particularly happy.
So does she make the bed in your house, or does the bed just go unmade?
Typically, it just goes unmade, which I know drives her crazy. So like it makes her feel really good when it is made. So when I am very selfishly trying to score brownie points with my wife, for whatever the reason may be, I will take the extra step of making the bed. Only for very selfish reasons, though.
But at least you know when you should make it. And like there's a reward for it at the end, or you've got out of the doghouse, whatever it may be, right? So at least you know the goodness of making it, I guess.
Yes.
is there.
Spoken like a true operator, playing psychological warfare there in the household.
One of the first things works in the Q course, unconventional warfare is not a task, it's a way of life. Got to UW the UW, baby.
Yeah, we didn't talk about all those applicable skill sets you picked up in the military that you're now utilizing in your civilian life, but I'm sure they're plentiful.
Yes. You are well equipped transitioning from the military to the civilian sector. You just need to learn some new applications for the tools that you already have.
Well, Scott, hey, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And this is Scott Kelly, not the astronaut, not the brother of Mark Kelly. It's the other viral Scott Kelly. Thanks so much for spending the last 50 or so minutes with Julie and I. Really enjoyed talking with you.
I appreciate the invitation and the time. Really enjoyed it. Happy to talk to you guys anytime. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Military One Percenters, whether you're brainstorming your first business idea, already running a company, or just curious about where to start, Dog Tags to Ownership is the place for you. Please hit that subscribe button to receive all new episodes. Also, if you know someone who has turned their dog tags into ownership, drop us a DM on social media or tag someone. We are always looking for new guests to bring onto the podcast. And as always, Military One Percenters, thank you for your service. Let's continue this journey and working together to write our next chapter. Until next week, keep pushing to turn those dog tags into ownership.
From dog tags to ownership, heroes take the lead. Stories of veterans building dreams with passion, drive, and speed. From service to success, We're here to inspire the quest. Dog tags to ownership, we're the best. Take the prize.